Hare Krishna, dear devotees. This is Keshava Bharati Das Goswami, and we're reading the entire Valmiki Ramayana, retold by Krishna Dharma Prabhu from here in the UK. And tonight we're beginning part 2, entitled Chapter 1, Into the Forest. After their father had returned, Rama and Lakshman left the city and went along country paths toward the forest. Even though they urged Sumantra to drive quickly, a large number of citizens continued to follow them. Rama stopped to rest after some time and allowed the people to reach him. He said to them with affection, "You have shown your great love for me beyond any doubt. Now, for my pleasure, please bestow this same love upon my brother Bharat. I am sure he will take good care of you in every possible way. Although still a youth, he is old in wisdom and greatly heroic. He will prove a worthy master and dispel all your sorrows and fears. Serve him well, for he has been selected by our Lord the Emperor. It is also my desire that all of you please him with your service. Be kind to the Emperor so that he may not suffer excessive agony in my absence." Rama tried hard to make the people turn back, but they would not return. The more Rama showed his determination to stick to the path of righteousness and truth, the more the people desired to have him as their ruler. It was as if Rama and Lakshman, by the cords of their virtuous qualities, had bound the people and were dragging them along. The chariot began to move forward again, and a group of elderly Brahmins, their heads shaking with age, ran behind, struggling to keep pace as the chariot picked up speed. They called out, "O swift steeds, stop, come back, and be friendly to your master Rama, who is always intent on pleasing the Brahmins. O horses, halt! Although endowed with excellent ears, do you not hear our plaintive cry? You should not bear Rama away. He is pure-minded, heroic, and virtuous. Therefore, you should return him to the city to be our king, not carry him away to some distant, lonely place." Rama looked back, feeling compassion for the distressed Brahmins. He did not want to ride himself while Brahmins walked, so he got down from his chariot and continued on foot. Although his heart was breaking to see the people's anguish, Rama looked straight ahead and walked with firm strides, followed by Sita and Lakshman. Sumantra drove slowly behind them in the chariot. As the Brahmins continued to beseech them, they gradually approached the banks of the river Tamasa. Searching out a suitable site, they decided to camp there for the night. The citizens of Ayodhya camped nearby. Rama released the horses and allowed them to drink the clear river water. After bathing, Rama spoke to Lakshman, indicating the forest across the river. "There lie the desolate woods, my brother, echoing on all sides with the sounds of birds and beasts. The city of Ayodhya will similarly resound with the cries of forlorn men and women, lamenting our having left. I fear for my father and mother, who must be weeping incessantly, and will perhaps even lose their sight." Rama thought of Bharat. By now he would have been informed of the situation. Thinking of Bharat's nobility, Rama felt reassured as he spoke with Lakshman. I am sure the high-minded Bart will take good care of our parents, consoling them in every way. As I reflect upon Bart's soft-heartedness and piety, my mind is pacified. My dear Lakshman, I am grateful you have chosen to follow me, for this too gives me solace. Fasting for this our first night in the forest, in accord with scriptural codes, I shall now sleep peacefully. Lakshman had Sumantra prepare a bed of leaves on the ground, and Rama lay upon that with Sita. He soon fell asleep, but Lakshman stayed awake, guarding his brother. Nearby he could see the many fires lit by the people who were following Rama toward the forest. In the middle of the night, Rama rose and again spoke with his brother. It seems there is no possibility of us convincing the citizens to return to their homes. He said, looking across to the place where the people had set up camp. Just see the pains they are taking to follow us, sleeping now on the bare ground. Surely they would sooner give up their lives than go back to the city without us. Let us leave immediately, while the people still sleep. They should not have to endure this austerity further on our behalf. As rulers of the people, it is our duty to eradicate our subjects' suffering. Certainly, we should not cause them pain. Thus we must leave now and throw them off our trail. Lakshman agreed, and as Rama woke, woke Sita, he roused Sumantra and had him prepare the chariot. The two princes and Sita climbed aboard, and Sumantra drove it swiftly upstream, away from the sleeping people. The charioteer crossed a shallow part of the river, and then, leaving the common road, drove through the woods, doubling back and going by different paths, sometimes riding through shallow waters. For some distance, Sumantra made sure the people would not be able to track them. He drove quickly, and before dawn they had gone a considerable distance from where the citizens were camped. As dawn approached in the camp, the sound of numerous birds mingled with the lowing of cows which grazed freely on the riverbank. Roused by these sounds, the citizens arose and soon discovered that Rama and his party had left. They were shocked and began to loudly lament. They condemned sleep for having stolen Rama from them. Falling to the ground, they wept and said, "How could Rama, who was fit to rule the globe, put on the dress of an ascetic and leave for distant lands? How did that jewel among men, who was just like a loving father, go to the forest, leaving us forlorn? Let us now meet our death by fasting until death, or by setting out on the final great journey to the north." Looking all around, they found big logs of dry wood. Some of them suggested they pile up the wood to make a funeral pyre and immediately enter it. What use was their life now? What could they say to their near and dear ones in Ayodhya when asked of Rama's whereabouts? How could they say they let him enter the forest even as they slept? When they returned without Rama, the city would surely become desolate and devoid of all happiness. Having gone out with that high-souled hero, firmly determined to follow him anywhere, how could they now go back without him? Continuously crying out, the citizens sought out the chariot's tracks and began to follow them. When they found themselves thrown off the trail by Sumantra's expert driving, they became utterly despondent. Their anguished voices echoed around the woods, Alas, what shall we do? We are doomed by Providence. Gradually the bewildered citizens began to reluctantly head back toward Ayodhya, following the tracks the chariot had made when leaving the previous day. Depressed and despairing, the citizens finally arrived at the city. They were blinded by grief and hardly able to distinguish between their own relatives and others. They searched for their homes with difficulty, some of them even entering the wrong houses. Afflicted with sorrow, they cast their eyes all around, and although the city and their houses were filled with abundant riches, to them it appeared vacant, and nothing gave them pleasure. Ayodhya seemed at that time to be like the firmament bereft of the moon. Everywhere its citizens shed tears, and all of them felt like giving up their lives. No one rejoiced on any occasion, even when coming upon unexpected fortune. No one rejoiced on any occasion, even when coming upon unexpected fortune, or seeing the birth of a firstborn child. Merchants did not display their merchandise, nor did the goods even seem attractive. Householders did not cook food, and the household deities were neglected. As the men returned home without Rama, their wives reproached them. Without seeing Rama, what is the use of our house, children, or wealth? The wives said. It seems the only virtuous man in this world is Lakshman, who has followed Rama to the forest in order to serve him. The men, pained by the loss of Rama, made no reply. Their wives lamented at length. How could they remain under the protection of the old king who had lost his good sense and sent Rama away? Worse still was the prospect of serving Kaikeyi, whose aim was now completely achieved. Having forsaken her husband and disgraced her family for the sake of power, who else would she not abandon? The ladies could not contain their feelings. Out of despair, they remonstrated with their husbands. Thanks to Kaikeyi, this kingdom will be ruined. With Rama gone, Dashrath will soon meet his end, along with his distinguished line, which has existed for so long. How can there be any good fortune with Kaikeyi in a position of power? We should therefore end our lives. Or should we follow Rama to some distant place, where Kaikeyi's name will never be heard? The glorious and ever-truthful Rama shall be our only shelter. As the ladies of Ayodhya lamented, the sun gradually set on the city, leaving it dark and cheerless, its lights unlit, and its temples and public meeting places deserted. Fallen upon evil days, the celebrated city became silent. The sounds of singing, rejoicing, and instrumental music having ceased, all the people remained in their own homes, only thinking of Rama. During that night, the chariot carrying the princes covered a long distance. As they traveled, Rama remembered the pain of his relations and people. Reflecting again and again upon his father's command, he kept his determination strong and urged Sumantra to drive swiftly. They passed many villages, seeing on their outskirts well-tilled and cultivated fields, as well as beautiful, blossoming woodlands. People from the villages to where the news of Rama's exile had already spread, saw the chariot passing, by, and they censured the emperor, and especially Kaikeyi, saying the cruel Kaikeyi has acted without propriety. She has caused the exile of the highly virtuous Rama. What will become of us now? How will the delicate princess Sita survive in the forest? How shameful that the king could abandon all affection for such a son and daughter-in-law. Going more slowly, as he passed the people, Rama heard their comments, and he smiled at them without saying anything. As the chariot moved on more swiftly, the travelers saw innumerable gardens, fruit orchards, and lotus ponds. Temples resonant with the sounds of sacred incantations were everywhere. While sitting in the chariot and enjoying the sights of his flourishing kingdom, Rama thought of his coming exile. He would long for the day of his return to this prosperous land of Koshala. As they at last reached Koshala's southern border, Rama got down from the chariot and stood facing the direction of Ayodhya. With his face covered with tears, he spoke in a choked voice, "I take leave of you, O foremost of cities. Protected by the emperor and your presiding deities, may you fare well. When I have squared my debt to my father and fulfilled his pledge, I shall return." Many country dwellers had gathered around Rama. They were filled with grief to see him bid his sad farewell to Ayodhya. Rama glanced at them with affection. He thanked them. He thanked them for the love they showed for him and told them to go home. The people simply stood gazing at Rama, unable to move. Although he urged them to return home, they stood rooted to the spot. They could not turn away from the heroic and handsome prince. As they stood watching, Rama remounted his chariot and it disappeared into the distance, even as the sun sets at the end of the day. Gradually the party reached the Ganges River. Gradually, the party reached the Ganges River in the Ushinara province. Along the banks of the river, for as far as the eyes could see, in both directions, were clustered the hermitages of ascetics and rishis. Hundreds of hills ran along the length of the river, and the river flowed with cool water flecked with white foam, making a roaring sound as it rushed past. Somewhere the river ran still and deep, and somewhere else it dashed violently against rocks. In places it was covered with white lotuses, while in others thousands of swans, cranes, and herons hovered on its waters. It was the resort of even gods and Gandharvas, who sported along its banks. Surrounded by trees laden with fruits and flowers and full of varieties of singing birds, the river appeared most beautiful. Seeing this celestial region, Rama decided to stop for the night. He took shelter under the branches of a large tree and sat down to offer worship to the Ganges. Sumantra unyoked the horses and allowed them to drink and then roll on the grassy riverbank. The charioteer stood with folded hands near Rama, who sat peacefully with Sita by his side. The king of that territory was named Guha, a dear friend of Rama who ruled over the tribal people known as the Nishadas. Hearing from his people of Rama's presence, they immediately went to see him. Guha found Rama by the bank of the Ganges and stood at a distance, waiting respectfully for his audience. He was overjoyed to find his friend arrived in his kingdom, but his joy was mixed with sorrow at seeing him dressed as an ascetic. Rama looked up and saw Guha standing there, surrounded by his relations and elder ministers. Quickly approaching him with Lakshman, he tightly embraced him and they exchanged greetings. Guha spoke to Rama, whom he had met on many occasions in Ayodhya when going there to pay tribute. I am honored by your presence in my kingdom. This land here is as much yours as it is mine. Indeed, I am your servant. Only order me, and I shall immediately do whatever you wish." He showed Rama the many varieties of food and drink he had brought, as well as the excellent beds he had prepared for them. Rama thanked them and said, "I have been well honored by you today. You should know that I am under a strict vow to live in the forest as an ascetic. I accept your offerings, but allow you to take them back. Please leave only as much as may be taken by my horses. Since these steeds are dear to my father, you will please me by serving them well." Reluctantly, Gua commanded his men to do as Rama had requested, having the best of food brought for the horses. He watched with sadness and admiration as Rama accepted only water for himself and then lay down to sleep on a bed of leaves. Lakshman washed Rama's feet and again kept vigil nearby. Going over to Lakshman, Guha said, "Here is a bed for you. There is no need to remain awake, for I shall stand here, bow in hand, and guard you from all danger. There is nothing in these woods unknown to me. Indeed, along with my men, I could withstand the attack of a vast and powerful army coming upon this region." Guha took Lakshman by the arm and showed him the bed, but Lakshman politely refused his offer. "Under your protection, we feel not even the least fear, O sinless Guha. But how can I rest while Rama and Sita lie down on the earth?" Lakshman looked at his brother, lying beneath the tree. His mind was troubled. How could one such as Rama, who was capable of withstanding even the gods in battle, be brought to such a state? Lakshman's thoughts drifted to Ayodhya. He became restless, thinking of his father and the subjects. Certainly Dasharath would soon breathe his last, having sent his dearest son to a life of severe austerity. Probably Kaushalya and the king would die at that very night, uttering words of despair and anguish. Losing their beloved monarch and watching Rama depart, the people of Ayodhya would be seized with agony after agony. Engrossed in such thoughts, Lakshman breathed heavily like an infuriated serpent. Hot tears glided down his face. Guha placed an arm around his shoulder and gently reassured him. As the two men stood the night, as the two men spoke, the night gradually slipped away. When dawn broke, Guha arranged for a large rowboat to ferry the princess across the fast-flowing Ganges. The time had arrived to leave the chariot and continue on foot. As the princes fastened on their armor and weapons, Sumantra humbly approached them with joined palms and asked for instructions. Rama smiled and said, "You have rendered me excellent service, O Sumantra. Please return now to the king's presence and inform him of our well-being. We should now proceed on foot." Sumantra found it difficult to leave Rama. Gazing into his face, he spoke in an anguished voice. "What man in this world has ever had to face such a perverse destiny, O Raghava? What is the value of cultivating piety and truth when we see such a result? We are actually lost and ruined by your departure. Coming under the control of the sinful Kaikeyi, we will simply suffer." Sumantra broke down and wept for some time, and Rama comforted him. As he regained his composure, Rama said, "I cannot think of anyone who is as great a friend to our family as you, O noble charioteer. I cannot think of anyone who is as great a friend to our family as you, O noble charioteer. Please act in a way which will not increase my father's grief. Whatever he instructs should be carried out without hesitation, even if the orders you even if he orders you to serve Kaikeyi. Rama understood all the nuances of statecraft. He was worried that in his absence the king's ministers and servants might try to undermine Kaikeyi. He wanted the kingdom to run smoothly and his father to be spared any unnecessary anxiety in dealing with intrigues. Wanting also to ensure that his family not be left anxious for his sake, Rama added, "Please tell my father that neither Lakshman nor Sita nor I are grieving in any way." Happily do we commence on our sojourn in the woods. The period of 14 years will soon pass, and we shall return. Rama considered the urgent need to re-establish stability in Ayodhya. He spoke solemnly to Sumantra, asked the king to fetch Bharat quickly and duly install him as Prince Regent. Bharat himself should be told to accept the post without any hesitation, for this will be most pleasing to me. He should then serve the king and all the queens with an equally disposed mind. Rama gave his permission for Sumantra to leave, but the charioteer still stood before him, his mind perplexed. How could he return without Rama? He revealed his mind to Rama. As we left the city, the people were practically rendered senseless with grief upon seeing you in this chariot. Even upon seeing you in this chariot. What then will be their state when they see the chariot returning empty? Surely Ayodhya will be torn in two, even as the army of a hero is split apart when it sees his chariot carrying only the charioteer, the hero having been slain. Sumantra thought of Dasharath and Kaushalya. They would be devastated by grief when they heard that their son had actually entered the forest. Sumantra felt incapable of returning. He pleaded with Rama to let him go to the forest too. He was prepared to remain with Rama for the full 14 years, rather than go back to Ayodhya without him. Falling to the ground and clasping Rama's feet, he spoke with pain in his voice. "My desire is to convey you back to Ayodhya at the end of your exile. If I must return without you, then seated upon the chariot, I shall enter blazing fire. I am your devoted servant, and it does not befit you to abandon me now. Let me follow you and render you every service. 14 years will be as many moments in your presence, while in your absence it will seem like 14 ages." Rama was moved by compassion for Sumantra, who was piteously supplicating him again and again. He lifted the weeping charioteer. "I know your devotion for me, Sumantra. However, I must ask you to return. Kaikeyi will not be satisfied unless she sees the chariot returned without me and hears from you of my entry into the forest. For the good of the king, I want her to be convinced that I have fulfilled the terms of her boons, and I also desire that her son Bharat be given the kingdom." Rama knew that if any doubt remained about whether or not he had really gone to the forest, then, in the hope of his return, they would not install his brother Bharat. He therefore convinced Sumantra of the need for him to return to Ayodhya, carrying the messages he had given. With a heavy heart, Sumantra finally assented and got up on the chariot. Rama then turned and spoke to Guha. "It would not be proper for me to stay in a region where I have many men to serve me. I wish to go to some uninhabited part of the forest and live in a simple hermitage, gathering my daily food from wild roots and fruits." Rama knew Guha and his people were hoping to accommodate him in a nearby wood. But he was devoted to virtue and wanted to properly follow the scriptural instructions which prescribed a life of strict asceticism for one taking the vow of living in a forest. Using the sap of a banyan tree, Rama and Lakshman matted their hair into a thick mass. With their matted locks and their bark and grass garments, the two princes looked like a couple of ascetic rishis. Rama helped Sita onto the boat and then jumped aboard himself along with Lakshman. Headed by Guha, the oarsmen plied the boat out across the river. Rama waved to Sumantra, who stood motionless on the sandy riverbank, gripped by despondency. The boat approached the southern shore of the Ganges swiftly and smoothly. Sita folded her palms and prayed to the goddess Ganga for protection in the forest. The river was placid and shone like a sheet of glass under the bright sun. Small ripples spread from the sides of the boat as the oars gently and rhythmically splashed the water. Rama and Lakshman sat silently, thinking of Ayodhya and their family and friends. They watched as Sita sat in the prow of the boat, her eyes closed in prayer. Gradually, they approached the shoreline, with its sprawling forest reaching practically to the river's edge. After the party disembarked, Rama said a fond farewell to Guha. He embraced the forest chieftain, and then turned and walked toward the thick forest. Lakshman went ahead of him, placing Sita between them. As they walked, they heard the sounds of beasts and birds, the shrill trills of parrots, the grunts of boars, the cries of monkeys, and the occasional growls and roars of tigers. Rama was apprehensive about Sita's safety. The vast and trackless forest lay immediately ahead. What dangers would they now have to face? But as they began to penetrate into the forest, Ram's fear for Sita gave way to delight. At last, the moment had arrived. His father's word would now be redeemed. Despite any danger, he would surely stay here for 14 years, thinking only of the glory of his aged and pious king. Keeping his mind fully alert, Rama gripped the great bow which hung on it from his shoulder, and placed his other hand on the hilt of the blue steel sword strapped to his belt. The three travelers had become hungry, and they searched for roots and bulbs fit for offering in the sacrificial fire. After they had cooked and made the offering, they ate, and when the meal was over, they performed their evening worship. Rama and Lakshman sat together, and Rama spoke a little to his brother. "Surely the king will sleep only fitfully tonight, O Lakshman. On the other hand, Kaikeyi will rest peacefully with her desired object fulfilled." Rama was pensive. Until now, he had not dwelt upon his own anxiety for fear of increasing the pain of those he loved. Now that he was finally in the solitude of the forest, he felt a deep disquiet. What other terrible suffering would Kaikeyi cause for his father? With Bharat installed as Prince Regent, perhaps she would even try to bring about Dasharata's death so that her own son might more quickly become the king. How could the king protect himself, being weakened by grief? What would become of his mother Kaushalya, as well as Sumitra? Rama appeared anxious as he continued. "I think that in the morning you should return to Ayodhya, O noble prince. Protect our mothers and our aged father. I do not see anyone else who can guard against Kaikeyi's evil intrigues. Even now, she may be plotting to poison our parents." Although he felt helpless, Rama nevertheless censured himself for failing to secure his parents' happiness. Having undergone great pains to nurture him with love, They were deprived of his company just when they should have found their labors repaid. Alas, exclaimed Rama, I am an ungrateful and useless son. Rama wept. He could by no means breach the order of Kaikeyi and his father, but he feared he might be acting wrongly if the result was his parents' death. Torn apart by his feelings, he wanted Lakshman to go back to Ayodhya and to protect them. Rama lamented loudly for some time. When he fell silent, Lakshman replied, Please do not grieve in this way, dear brother, as you simply cause grief for myself and Sita. It is not possible for me to leave you, as I would not survive even a short while in your absence. Placing your faith in the pious Bharat, you should not send me away. I only wish to remain with you here and do not desire even the highest heaven without you. Rama remained silent. He knew very well that Lakshman would never leave him. It had grown dark, and the brothers sought the shelter of a large tree where Rama and Sita lay down to rest. Lakshman remained awake a short distance away, vigilantly guarding them from any danger. Gradually, the full moon arose and shone through the branches of the high trees, illuminating the beautiful faces of Rama and Sita as they slept, which appeared to Lakshman like two more moons fallen to the earth. The following morning, they went to an easterly direction, toward the confluence of the Ganges and the Yamuna. They were keen to find the hermitages of rishis whom they had lived in that region, whom they knew lived in that region. The famous sage Bharadwaj, the leader of all the Brahmins inhabiting that forest, dwelled nearby. As they walked, they were enraptured by the colorful beauty of the forest. Huge trees rose up on all sides. In some places, the trees opened up into expansive clearings carpeted by innumerable varieties of flowers and shrubs. Lakes of crystal clear water, covered with white, blue, and reddish lotuses, were seen here and there. The trees were laden with blossoms, filling the air with their fragrance. The sounds of cuckoos, parrots, and peacocks echoed all around. Keeping close together, the three travelers walked throughout the day, sometimes moving easily, and at other times with difficulty, through densely wooded regions. Toward the end of the afternoon, they heard in the distance the sound of the two rivers rushing to meet each other. Around them, they began seeing signs of life, chopped wood and man-made paths. Catching sight of smoke rising above the trees, they realized they had found the dwellings of the rishis, and they quickly went toward them. At the precincts of the hermitage, they were greeted by a young ascetic who was a disciple of Bharadwaj. He led them through the many thatched cottages of the Brahmin community, showing them to a great sacrificial arena where Bharadwaj was seated. Surrounded by his disciples, the sage sat before the sacred fire, absorbed in meditation. As soon as the three travelers caught sight of the effulgent rishi, they prostrated themselves on the earth in obeisance. They waited respectfully at a distance for the sage to beckon it to them. Bharadwaj had attained virtual omniscience by his long practice of asceticism and meditation. He immediately sensed the presence of his exalted guests, and he rose up to greet them. Going before the sage, Rama said with joined palms, "We are Rama and Lakshman, the sons of Emperor Dasharath. O highly venerable sage, here is my blessed and irreproachable wife, a princess of Videha, and the daughter of King Janaka. Ordered by my ever-pious father, I have come to this forest to live the life of an ascetic for 14 years, and my brother and wife have chosen to follow me. Please bless us." Bharadwaj gazed upon the faces of his guests, understanding their divine identities. He offered them various delicious foods prepared from wild roots and fruits. Tears flowed from his eyes as he spoke to Rama. I already knew of your exile and have been expecting you to pass this way. Your auspicious arrival here at my hermitage signals the success of all my austerities and sacrifices. It is highly difficult to have a sight of you, and today I am supremely blessed. My dear Rama, if you so desire, you may remain here in this delightful stretch of land, which is quite suitable for the life of asceticism. Smiling and graciously accepting the sage's offerings of love, Rama replied, This hermitage is well known, and is not so far from the state of Ayodhya. The people will soon seek me out if I remain here. Please tell me of some other, more lonely place, for I will not be able to tolerate the pain of the people again beseeching me to return. Bharadwaj understood Ram's concern. He directed the prince to a mountain named Chitrakuta, lying some 50 miles away. After spending the night at the sage's hermitage, the three travelers set out the next morning toward the mountain. It lay across the Yamuna, which they crossed by means of a raft constructed from timber and bamboo. As they walked toward Chitrakuta, they saw countless varieties of trees and plants spreading everywhere in tableaus of rich colors. The constant singing of thousands of birds resounded on all sides. Mingling with the sounds of trickling rivulets and cascading waterfalls, from time to time the trumpeting of an elephant could be heard in the distance. Branches of great trees were bent low under the burden of their sweet fruits. From many of them hung large honeycombs, heavy with the thick honey produced by the black bees droning around the fragrant forest flowers. Sita was captivated by the beauty of the forest, touching and smelling the many blossoms that hung all around, completely forgetting his grief and anxiety. Rama laughingly held her hand and told her all the names of the trees and plants. The three travelers were elated simply to see such a celestial region. In great happiness, they moved toward Chitrakuta. The part of the forest leading to Chitrakuta had been rendered quite passable due to the regular traffic of ascetics, and the travelers made good progress. After the end of the third day of their departure from Bharadwaj's hermitage, they approached the foot of the mountain. They saw there a huge banyan tree, which spread its branches of dark green leaves away in all directions. Bowing down to the presiding deity of the tree, Sita offered her respects. She prayed that they would successfully complete their exile and return that way again on their way to Ayodhya. Lakshman prepared beds of leaves near the foot of the tree. After saying their evening prayers and preparing a meal, the travelers rested for the night. At sunrise, the following day, Rama and his party moved on again, with the great Chitrakuta mountain rising ahead of them. Bluish in color, it was covered with copses of green, yellow, and red trees. Numerous waterfalls sparkled in the morning sun. The mountain was sheer in places, smoothly sloping elsewhere. Its snow-covered peaks disappeared into the clouds. The travelers stopped and stared for some time at its majestic beauty. They began to ascend the mountain, and some way up its side arrived at the hermitage of the sage Valmiki, situated on a broad plateau. The sage was joyful to see Rama and his companions. He greeted them with hospitality and respect, and they conversed for some time. Valmiki told them of his own history. Although he was now a powerful ascetic, blazing with bodily luster. He had previously been a robber who had maintained his large family by plundering travelers. The rishi told the whole story. Once, long ago, he encountered the sage Narada in the forest and sought to steal from him. The sage told Valmiki he would happily give him anything he wanted, but he told him to first go to his family and ask them the following question. Are you prepared to accept a share of the sins which will ensue for my crimes? Valmiki assented to this request and went to his family. However, they declined to accept his sins, saying that they only wished to receive from him the fruits of his action in the form of money and goods. Leaving them in disgust, Valmiki returned to the sage, who then told him to renounce his life of crime and become an ascetic. In order to bring about in Valmiki a full sense of the temporality of life, Narada told him to meditate on the word Mara, meaning death. Valmiki thus constantly repeated the word Mara without realizing that he was in effect also repeating the holy name of Rama. By his meditation, he became a powerful rishi. Rama decided to stay close to Valmiki's hermitage, and he asked Lakshman to construct a cottage. Lakshman quickly erected a timber-walled hut. Lakshman quickly erected a timber-walled hut with a thatched roof. Rama lit a fire, and with roots gathered from nearby and cooked in the fire, he made offerings to the gods. He prayed to the Lokapalas, the principal deities who guard the universal quarters, asking them to sanctify and protect the dwelling. Then he entered it, along with Sita. Within that spacious two-roomed hut, Rama constructed an altar for the worship of Vishnu in accord with the instructions of Scripture. Rejoicing at having found such a delightful place for their residence, the three travels settled down in peace. End of chapter 1, part 2.